silent.
Yeah.
You know the difference between mother-in-laws and outlaws? Outlaws are wanted.
Oh, that's it. Again, that is
So
it.
we've been holding it. Coventry.
traded, marked out by a high cross known as the Market Cross. Here, people could air their grievances, share important information, and be entertained by singers and actors. The castle on the left-hand side stands out amongst the buildings of Kilkenny. It has an Italian-style arcade facade and was once used as a tax office and a toll house in medieval times. Here you would pay your taxes or any other money that you owed to the city. You could also ask for financial help, a medieval form of welfare aid. Today the building is home to our city hall. Behind High Street, you will find St Mary's Medieval Church, which is now home to the Medieval Mile Museum, a world-class visitor experience with artefacts and monuments that span 8 centuries.
Well, here we go.
Here he goes. Definitely have him.
In on the left is the ruin of St Francis's Abbey, which was built as a monastery in the 1200s. Records tell us that the monks began making ale, using God's gift of good water. Now, in medieval times, ale was used to quench thirst and hunger. If truth be told, times haven't really changed that much, and ale is just as popular now as it was in the time of the monks. The famous Smithwick's ale was brewed here in Kilkenny for 300 years. Daniel O'Connell once gave a speech from the upper window of the Smithwick's building, drawing thousands of people to hear his words. Quick, look to the right and see the magnificent stone building with the great arches. That was once my home. My name is Rose Archer. I was married to John Rose, a wealthy merchant, and we lived there with our many children in the 1500s. On the left side is Kilkenny District Court, which was built on top of a 13th century castle. It opened as a prison in the 1500s and became a courthouse in the late 1700s. The large balcony was used by many as a place to give speeches, including the great Countess Markovich, who received the freedom of Kilkenny in 1917. It was rules that men of a certain age were to train in the skill of archery, and that they should practice their skills in a public training area called the butts. There was one slight problem with the ruling. Each man had to have his own longbow, and each landlord was to provide his servants with one each. But there was a shortage of longbows in Ireland. This in turn led to another new law. This one applied to merchants. Anyone importing goods from England was obliged to import them longbows.
Quiz on this later.
The last remaining watchtower of Kilkenny's Great Walls. Kilkenny city was divided into 3 small towns: High Town, Irish Town, and the town of St John's. It was surrounded by an 8-metre high defensive wall made up of gatehouses and 9 watchtowers. This extensive wall made Kilkenny the largest walled town in Ireland. Ellen Cuff became Lady Desert in the late 1800s. She was a philanthropist who dedicated her life to charitable works. She built Desert Hall in 1903 for use as a community centre. The building has a distinct look and is a rare example of Irish classical architecture. Lady Desert was a remarkable woman with great foresight. She set up a woolen mill to provide work and built houses for the workers to live in. She also commissioned a hospital, founded a theatre and opened a library. Her library is still in use today and is a fine example of a Carnegie Library. She was active in politics, becoming the first female senator in Ireland.
Looks like a car driving towards you.
Yeah, I know. I kept it.
Yeah.
Why just keep going?
in the reflection of his coat. When he was beeping his horn, I could see a car coming, and I was thinking,
I did it first.
Kilkenny is internationally renowned for festivals. We have everything from comedy, music, food, the arts, and believe it or not, a scarecrow festival. We have a number of amateur and professional theatre companies here. Historical resources provide recorded accounts of actors performing short plays in the middle of the 1500s. The writer of Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift, went to school at Kilkenny College and travelled each day on horseback from his home in Jenkinstown. Berkeley University in California was named after the great philosopher and mathematician George Berkeley, who left Kilkenny in 1685. The White House in Washington, D.C. was built by James Hoban from Cuff's Grange.
Yeah.
oh, he is. It's hard. You can film up the roof.
Film up in the roof.
Approaching St Mary's Cathedral, one of the most impressive Gothic buildings in Kilkenny. Commissioned in 1842, the building of the cathedral was an ambitious undertaking. It was designed by William Dean Butler, one of the founders of the Royal Institute of Architects in Ireland. It took several years to build, providing work for many of those affected by the famine. Its highest tower is 186 feet high, and it stands out as a landmark across the Kilkenny skyline. When it opened, people came from miles around to see it. It must have been a marvellous sight. The altar was made of Italian marble, which was shipped in from Italy, and the relics of twin brothers St Cosmo and St Damien were brought from Rome. If anyone on board is in the medical profession, you might like to know that St Cosmo and St Damien are patrons of all those who work in medicine. A later altar was designed by James Pearce, father of the 1916 rising leader Padraig Pearse. To the right, you will see St Patrick's graveyard. Some of the burials here date to the 17th century. There's also a number of famine victims buried here. Over 1 million people died. 30,000 lives were lost in Kilkenny alone. At McDonagh Junction, the site of Kilkenny's main workhouse, the remains of 900 people were found there and were reinterred in a commemorative garden. Many people survived the famine by emigrating. Over 2 million people left Ireland. Over 80% of the immigrants travelled to the United States, while the rest went to Canada, Australia and England. Looking again to your right, you'll see a fine example of an Irish Georgian house. Butler House is the dower house of Kilkenny Castle. Hello, my name is Lady Eleanor Butler. This house was built for me by my husband Walter. I'm so glad to see the house is still in use today. It's now a hotel and tea rooms, and it has a stunning walled garden through which you can access the castle yard. right-hand side opened in 1853. It was a teacher training school, opened under an initiative to standardise education in Ireland. In 1939 it reopened as Kilkenny's first technical school, and today it is a school for further education.
Yeah, I like the music.
I don't like it. Going on and on and on.
No, that's right, yeah.
Churches and great houses. Get your cameras ready so you can look back and remember the special city of Kilkenny. Kilkenny's long history stretches all the way back to prehistoric times. People have lived here through each era, from the Mesolithic right up to the city you see today. The areas of counties Kilkenny and nearby County Laois were once part of the Kingdom of Ossory. By the 6th century, the church realised the importance of the area and a great monastery was built. The monastery was named after a saint, Saint Canis. This is how Kilkenny got its present-day name. Kilkenny comes from the Irish word Killarney, which simply means the Church of Canis. Many Irish place names begin with the word Kil. Anytime you see this, you will know that a church existed in that area. As Kilkenny grew in power and wealth, it drew the attention of the Vikings, who were rather fond of attacking, plundering, and killing anybody who got in their way. One such attack occurred in Dunmore Caves. The marauding Vikings were on their way to County Waterford when they raided the area around Dunmore, forcing families to flee and take shelter in the deep caverns of Dunmore Caves. The Vikings lit fires, hoping the smoke would force the villagers out, but tragically this did not work, and at least 1,000 people died on that tragic night. When it comes to invasions, Ireland has had her fair share. Under the old system of power, each province of Ireland had a king. In 1166, the King of Leinster, Dermot MacMurrough, lost his throne. He did not accept his loss gracefully. He turned to the Normans for help. Richard de Clare, a great Norman knight, better known as Strongbow, arrived in Ireland, bringing with him soldiers to defeat those who had opposed MacMurrough. Strongbow was promised that he could marry Aoife, Dermot's daughter. This marriage of convenience would become much more than that. Aoife was educated and smart, and she and Strongbow would rule side by side, with Aoife leading Strongbow's troops into battles on many occasions. They built a timber castle in Kilkenny in 1173, and Aoife defended their lands long after Strongbow's death. Their daughter was married to William Marshall. They rebuilt Aoife and Strongbow's castle in stone, and the castle is one of the greatest castles to be found in Ireland today. Under Marshall's reign, the people of Kilkenny received their first charter. Kilkenny was to face many changes when the Marshall family line ended and the Butler family, the Earls of Ormond, became the new rulers. As the Norman invaders settled and married in Ireland, concerns were raised that they were becoming too Irish. The Statutes of Kilkenny were introduced.
If any English or Irish living among the English use the Irish language among themselves, his lands and tenements shall be seized into the hands of his immediate lord.
Henry VIII made a decision that would change Ireland. His ban on Catholicism would see Ireland suffer, but the city would gain prominence thanks to several wealthy merchant families. For a time, Kilkenny became the seat of the Irish Parliament, but it would collapse when Cromwell laid siege to the city. Kilkenny would rally again, and centuries of milling would see Kilkenny become the county it is today.